that means that there's a lot of money going around. And everybody thinks that this will last forever. But on the horizon right now is a lot of reports that things are not boding well. I am going to make the case that the Call of Duty World League makes absolutely no sense and that all of the investors in it are being taken for a ride. Pretty much every venture capitalist that is getting into this sees the corollary over to sports and is looking at a long-term vision of like 7 to 10 years that probably doesn't exist because they don't understand gaming is not native to sports and is a different type of thing. So here we go. There are several problems with the CWL League, starting with, I think, problem number one, which is that the buy-in is ridiculously high, okay? So starting with the buy-in is ridiculously high. We're looking at 30 million to 50 million for a slot, allegedly, right? And that ROI has to get paid back. So how is that ROI going to get paid back? Well, it's going to get paid back in sponsorships and advertising. And ideally, those sponsorships should be able to cover that price in some X amount of years, right? But we now don't have to speculate on how well sponsorships do to support leagues, right? Because we can look at previous leagues that couldn't do it. So Overwatch as a league, OWL, is struggling enormously to get sponsors. They're dropping sponsors left and right. The sponsors they do get are for low valuations. H1Z1 League outright failed because it couldn't get sponsors. League of Legends, the most premier league that's been around the longest and also probably has the most successful track record of actually getting sponsors, is having trouble. Like Riot has said several times that there is no ROI in running a league like this, right? They just do it to they claim it's to market. They claim it's because it's cool. They want to do it. The real reason is because that money is basically a marketing expense. I mean, if I was an accountant at Riot Games, I would actually put the League of Legends, the whole LCS, I would just write off as a marketing expense because what it does is it sells people to play the game who then buy skins, and there's a monetization model there that is unique to LCS and League of Legends, right? Like Call of Duty doesn't really have that same engine to be able to drive those sales. Overwatch doesn't either. Like those, it's not going to work in the same way. So the second problem here is the ROI is probably low for the current viewership, and will take a long time to be profitable, if ever. So justified by like Overwatch is struggling with sponsors, LCS is struggling with sponsors, H1Z1 just couldn't get sponsors. There's plenty of franchise leagues that just are not. In fact, I don't think we have an example of a franchise league in esports that is actually succeeding on this front. Now, what venture capitalists are saying is they think that the leagues will eventually pay itself back, right? Because they think that the growth of esports will eventually make these buy-ins justified. But the amount of money it's going to take for an individual team to get a $30 or $50 million ROI is insane. It's like really, really crazy. The only way that those teams are actually going to exit is if they sell to someone else who buys into it, right? And for the longest time before sports teams became profitable to run, this was the case, where you would just sell your sports team to another person who wanted to own it, and that was how you would do your exit. There's probably going to be similar here, but the other thing here, the third reason is let's talk about this city-based model. What I'm going to say here is more anecdotal before I start getting into the numbers, but like I am of the opinion that the city-based model doesn't work. I don't understand city-based loyalty in an internet ecosystem. Doesn't make sense to me. So first of all, we have a lot of people that are moving around. So like people don't like stay in one city all their life like they used to for sports. Not like, yep, I'm San Francisco born and raised, like I love the Giants, like, type of thing is like becoming less and less loyalty. But the internet like pushes out that loyalty and it makes it more and more difficult to believe that people are going to affiliate with a team just because of the city. There's like moreover, they're going to affiliate with like players that they like or narratives or stories they like or content that they like. That seems to be the sort of new case. So like making a city-based model and then saying that you're going to get like what the sale is like literally is like we're getting viewers from the city. The city is actually bringing us viewers. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if that's going to be the case. I don't think it's like, hey, we have an esports team now is going to make like meaningfully more people watch Call of Duty that wouldn't otherwise be watching it because they're either interested in what esports is or they're interested in the narrative. So the city-based model as like a main valuation just never has made sense to me. I just don't think it makes any sense. But now we can actually look into like the stats. So Call of Duty Black Ops 4, which is the current Call of Duty game, and it's a great time to look at these numbers because we're in an ecosystem where Call of Duty is kind of like evened out over its release. So these are kind of like the averages that we could expect. There's about 1,000 channels that stream it. Out of those channels, there's 11,927 viewers in the entire category. You got about 12K viewers. About 778,000 hours broadcast and about 8.5 million hours watched. So because a lot of people don't know how to compare these statistics, let's compare this to a game like Fortnite as a category, which has also been out for a long time. And you can look at the difference. So whereas Call of Duty has 8.5 million hours watched, Fortnite has a healthy, just go ahead and 10x that number, put another 8 there, and you get 88 million hours watched. There's 8,000 channels that broadcast it versus 1. And there's 123,000 average viewers in the category versus 12K. This is an example of a game that could justify a $50 million valuation. But Black Ops 4 is a game that's a valuation for a single team in the league, right? Not even the entire league, much less the price of the league and all it is to build it up and everything it costs to actually run this thing. And all the employees and all the people that are going to be involved in that and hosting the tournaments and flying players out and player salaries and everything. Your buy-in is going to be 30 to 50 million just to get in. And that's before you're bleeding money because each individual team is not going to be cash flow positive by just participating in the league. They need to be self-running businesses. So they have to monetize themselves. They have to do content. They have to pay their players. They have to do products and services. They have to run merch. They have to build a brand. How in the world are these teams going to get their ROI off of Black Ops 4? And if we look at the actual Call of Duty CWL itself, right, the actual league that's been going, these numbers are even worse. So we look at this. The peak viewership ever has been 117,000. So if we look at this over the same amount of time, there's been 318,000 max viewers during the current season of the LCS. 117,000 average viewers versus 16,000 average viewers. So 10x more in the League of Legends. Keeping in mind that League of Legends as a buy-in, if you want to buy in to an LCS spot, it's an estimated, I'd say $7 to $15 million versus the 30 to 50 that are being required for CWL. And League of Legends boasts literally a magnitude of 10 on every stat, with far more hours watched, far more hours broadcast, and far more. And also, by the way, let's just go into this. It's brand friendly versus Call of Duty, which is a huge issue. COD is brand friendly to almost nobody. They're going to have way more trouble selling these slots. This is something I didn't consider until right now, but they're going to have way more trouble selling these sponsorship opportunities to people rather than League of Legends or Fortnite will. Actually, an impossibly hard time because in Call of Duty you've got terrorists, you've got SWAT team operatives, you've got all kinds of heavy violence. Remember, we were watching that YouTube video the other day where we were talking about how YouTube will gate content based on categories. Well, Call of Duty hits all of those categories. This is not a sponsor-friendly game, and that is going to affect the actual revenue that comes from sponsors, which is the main way that you're going to get money back for this in a dramatic way. It's more than Overwatch, and Overwatch is already having problems selling these slots. So Call of Duty is in big trouble. I would not want to be on their sales team to try to figure out this problem. So the League of Legends category overall, which we already know is having problems justifying their ROI, and these teams are bleeding money almost universally, except for like teams that have huge content backings like 100 Thieves or Team Liquid that have been around for years and have figured out how to hold their own, I guess, are mostly bleeding cash, being in. They're losing money in addition to the price they had to pay to buy into the LCS. Now people are going to be losing $30 to $50 million, 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 $30 buying into CWL in addition to bleeding cash, because they're going to have, for every problem that an LCS team has with trying to get sponsors or trying to get pay their players, CWL is going to have that in spades. They're going to have it times way, way more, right? So CWL does not make sense. There's no element of this that makes sense. And I would say, even if you look at a time frame or a horizon of like 7 to 10 years, I just don't see this making sense. The only good news about CWL is that they can at least replace the game with the latest Call of Duty. So they won't have that burnout, and successful Call of Duties will increase the viability of the league. But the actual like unpopularity of a game will also factor into that as well. This is how people will make money off of this. And this is like the literal definition of a bubble, right? Company A buys esports team and then doesn't really do anything with it, but keeps hyping up the value and manages to sell to company B at a higher valuation. But these valuations don't make sense. Eventually, this might get really crazy, where you see like esports teams that are supposedly worth like 500 to 750 million. But when you actually look at their financials, they're burning cash. They don't have any revenue. They don't have any sponsors or advertisers. Like, I would say if you took the average valuation of an LCS team and you put it on the market, it wouldn't make any sense to buy that, but people will, because they're bought into this idea of esports becoming this thing. Does that make sense? So like, you can, like, Bobby Kottick is selling these slots because he's convincing venture capitalists who aren't familiar with the industry that this is a good idea. In the same way that lots of M&A goes, right? 85% of acquisitions of companies don't work. We read that in Decisive. There's that classic example of Quaker buying Snapple, right? $1.3 billion purchase. The valuation was way overhyped. They sold it for $300 million 2 years later. There's all kinds of examples of M&A going wrong in this way. And this is what bubbles are. What happens is the valuations go up and up and up. The price doesn't make sense. And eventually what happens is the whole industry collapses. And CWL is the worst offender of this. I've criticized Riot for this. I've also criticized OWL for this, but CWL by far is the worst offender. They are just outright, I mean, diabolical with how they're convincing VCs the valuations of these slots are that high. There is no way that CWL is higher value than League of Legends. I don't think anybody sane would make that claim. And the brand trust, the brand voice of Call of Duty is far worse than League of Legends. It's far harder to sell. Way, way harder to sell. And on top, and I'm just saying that's conceptually harder to sell, on top of the fact that it has less viewers. So like where is the upside here, right? You have way less viewers, you have way less hours watched, you have way less stats for advertisers, and your product is harder to sell. And you're charging 10x the price, or 6 to 7x the price of a slot for a game that is way more successful and still having problems. I don't know how CWL actually happens. Like, and the problem with this, was why does this matter, Devin? Like, why does any of this matter? Well, because what's going to happen is that this type of thing is going to collapse the industry for years. Like, what'll happen is, and people that don't know about this, like, it's because they don't look at market cycles. So if you look at something like the electric car, we had electric cars before. There's a really great movie called Who Killed the Electric Car? Tesla made electric cars cool again, and that's a really awesome thing that Tesla did. But electric cars were around since the 70s, and we had electric cars that could relatively do, like, there's been some improvements in technology, all the self-driving stuff and some battery life stuff, and has obviously become more efficient. But we had the viability to put self-driving cars on the road 30 years ago. We could have done that. What happened was there was a bunch of big car companies that killed it and convinced everybody that oil was better, and so electric cars just got pushed out. What can happen in market cycles is when markets collapse, it takes years and years for the market to recover, if it ever does. And it usually takes some kind of like really big push to get people back into it. Cryptocurrency is another big one of this, right? Like, whereas cryptocurrency has had these really big upswings and then 2 or 3 year cycles where it just sits and does nothing until it pops back up. In esports, we could be set back easily 10 years, 7 to 10 years, if because the VC world is not that big. The pyramid is very narrow at the top. And we could get into a situation where VCs invest all this money, then they can't get out. They're bleeding cash, so they shut down their esports teams and they pull out of these leagues. And as a result, all VCs pretty much lose confidence in the industry. And the valuation of a team like Cloud9, which is currently valued at $300 million, goes down to like $5 to $6 million overnight. And that can happen, right? Like, that has happened in many different industries. And the way that happens is by stuff like this. It's like when you offer things and people start paying for things and you convince them to buy things at these absurd rates, then you can't actually get your ROI and nobody's making money. Eventually the money runs out. So in the 4th of July, tomorrow, at the time of this recording, we are celebrating the longest successful bull run in the history of America. This is 10 years. It's amazing. That means that there's a lot of money going around. And everybody thinks that this will last forever. But on the horizon right now is a lot of reports that things are not boding well. Right now, for the next few quarters of 2019, earnings results are not looking too good. 77% of the companies that issued pre-announcements say their profits will be worse than Wall Street is expecting. So we can expect market downturns eventually. At some point, the markets have to go into recession to correct, right? When this happens, money will tighten and VC will tighten. And all of a sudden, burning cash becomes a bigger deal than it was before. People don't just have all this money to run around with. They have to figure out how to sustain businesses by actually making profits, which is why I am a big advocator of always trying to make your business make sense. If you are in business, you need to run a profit. Eventually, it doesn't have to be immediately, right? You could be a tech company that has eyes on profit eventually. But when you look at the S1s of some of these companies like Uber or Lyft or whatever, where they say like, we have no plans for profitability. We're just never going to be profitable. You can't invest in these companies with any kind of confidence, because when the market actually gets difficult and people stop buying these products and services and it tightens, these companies will go down in value a lot, and some of them will shut down. That is going to be exponentially true for esports, which is really in trouble right now. Like, esports is in a seriously, seriously bad state with stuff like this. Owl was doing esports no favors, and Owl was bad enough, because no way can you justify the prices of things in Overwatch. But CWL is that to a huge, huge degree. So TLDR, I am really concerned about esports right now. I think that I've talked about it before. I think esports is absolutely in a bubble. I think CWL is the worst offender of this bubble, and I can't see in any universe how these guys get any kind of return on investment in the next 10 years. The only way that changes is that esports is like this hidden phenomenon, and we're currently tapping like 1% of the total addressable market, and like there's like 90% of the audience is just like waiting to come into esports. But I just don't see it. Do you see it? I don't know where those viewers are going to come from, right? If the Call of Duty League right now averages 15K viewers, I don't see how that gets to 150K or 300K or 500K with just more time invested. If you don't change the content and you don't change the narrative, I don't see how that changes. And even with 150,000 viewers, even with you'd have to get up to League of Legends to even get close to justifying the valuations of these, and you still wouldn't even be close for $30 million a slot, assuming like best case numbers. You would not even come close. So you could 10x the viewership and you wouldn't be close to justifying ROI. You could 20x the viewership and you wouldn't be close to ROI. How do they think they're going to be doing this? And over the last year, viewership's not been meaningfully increasing. A 40% year over year viewership is going to take so long to actually go up. And in terms of like monthly cycles, it's going down. So in the last 180 days, it dropped 35%, but it's up for the year. I don't know how CWL makes any kind of sense. Thank you for coming out for this and for looking at this. We stream every day, twitch.tv/Devin Nash. You could also go to discord.gg/Devin, super easy link, and go check out more of our stuff. We stream every day, do a lot of talks like this. Some of them get to YouTube, some of them don't. Thank you. And also, please remember to subscribe to YouTube. It means a lot to me. Thank you.